Compare and contrast essay. Today, we are going to compare and contrast castles. Let's take a look at these two castles. The North Castle and the South Castle. But before comparing them, let's go over the parts of a castle. Do you remember them? We had battlements, flag, tower, stone wall, portcullis, catapult, moat, arrow slits. To be able to compare, first we need to know the individual characteristics of each one, of the North Castle and of the South Castle. Let's start with the North Castle. It has 3 towers. Can you see them? 1, 2, and 3. It has a portcullis. It's here. It has 7 windows. 1 here in the middle, 1, 2, 3 on one side, and 1, 2, 3 on the other side. They all add up to 7. It also has battlements. Remember, these are the battlements. It doesn't have flags. No flags. It doesn't have a moat. There is no moat surrounding the castle. And it doesn't have any arrow slits. No arrow slits anywhere. Now, let's take a closer look at the South Castle. The South Castle has 1 tower, and it also has a portcullis. Here it is. It has 3 windows, 1, 2 down at the bottom, and 3 in the tower. It has battlements. Can you see them? It has a flag at the top of the tower. It doesn't have a moat. We cannot see the moat. But it does have some arrow slits. They're here. We can see them. It has 4 arrow slits. Now that we know the individual characteristics, let's compare them. The North Castle and the South Castle. What we're going to do now is we're going to compare each aspect of each castle. So I have organized it in that order so it's easier to compare. Let's start with the first sentence. The North Castle, it has 3 towers. Now we look on the South Castle side and we can see that it says that it has 1 tower. That way we're comparing the North Castle's tower to the South Castle's tower. And we can say that one has 3 towers, whereas the other one only has 1 tower. Afterwards, I will teach you all the linking words that you will need to use. Let's continue with the sentences. The North Castle has a portcullis, and the South Castle has a portcullis too. So that is something they have in common. It's the same for the 2 castles. Let's continue. The North Castle has 7 windows. Do you remember when we counted them? Whereas the South Castle didn't have that many. It only had 3 windows. Next sentence. It's about battlements. The North Castle has battlements and the South Castle also has battlements. That is another thing they have in common. Let's continue. The North Castle doesn't have flags, but the South Castle does. It has 1 flag. Neither of them have a moat, so we have the same sentence 2 times. It doesn't have a moat, and it doesn't have a moat. And to finish, we can see that the North Castle doesn't have arrow slits, whereas the South Castle does. It has some arrow slits. This has helped us a lot to organize all the information that we had about the North Castle and the information we had about the South Castle. But as some of you already know, I love double bubble maps. And I think it's a great way to organize all that information in a mind map. But the cool thing about this mind map is that it's called double bubble because we have different bubbles that are the same for some and different from others. So we will have the North Castle and the South Castle. And this is what our double bubble map will look like. As you can see, I've used the same colors that I used before. I used orange for the things that were the same, so the orange ones are in the middle. And then I've used blue, red, green, and pink. Okay, orange, sorry, we can use this to see it better. Blue on one side for the North Castle, blue on the other side for the South Castle, red for the North Castle, red for the South Castle, green for the North Castle, green for the South Castle, pink and pink, okay? You know, I love using colors. I think they help us a lot to memorize and to internalize all the information and also to organize and structure it afterwards, okay? So I'm going to be using these colors all the time, okay? You can use the same colors, you can use different ones, it's up to you. But don't change them in your work. I mean, if you use orange to make them all the common things, continue using orange for the common things. Let's continue. Let's fill in the information of the double bubble map. Let's start with what they have in common. So both have a portcullis, so we have that in common. Both have battlements, they have battlements, and none of them have a moat. They don't have a moat. Okay? Now let's think and have a look at the things that they have different. Let's start with a blue arrow. Remember, it was about the windows. The North Castle had 7 windows, and the South Castle had 3. With the red color, we had the towers. So the North Castle has 3 towers, and the South Castle only has 1. In the green color, we had the arrow slits. The North Castle didn't have any arrow slits, whereas the South Castle had some arrow slits. And to finish, the South Castle had a flag, whereas the North Castle didn't have any flags. It doesn't have any flags. Okay? This is going to be really, really useful, I promise, okay? Because with this information, now we're actually going to write an essay, a type of writing called compare and contrast. But before we start with the writing, I need to teach you some very useful and new linking words. Let's go to it.